Welcome back to Media 7. We all have different needs of radio, and the ratings say that plenty of us like to be entertained, amused and occasionally shocked by the people we hear. In this week's Take 2, Sarah Daniel looks at radio's culture of cunning stunts.
Kyle Sandilands has been axed from Australian Idol. Last week's radio stunt involving a young rape victim went too far, and it had no choice but to dump him as a judge on the talent show.
Played the game and lost.
Shock jocks. They are lewd, rude, and this one's just been screwed. Kyle Sandilands' back catalogue includes drinking breast milk on air, launching a search for Australia's smallest dick. If shock rhymes with jock, Kyle rhymes with vile. New Zealand has a long tradition of radio piss-taking.
Now, Mrs. Cook, can I just ask you to point your remote at the ceiling?
At the ceiling, yes.
And turn it on.
All right.
Yes, in actual fact, what you've done now with Air Force One is you've brought down its undercarriage.
Oh, do I bring these into you?
You really can close down an airport, you know.
And that's exactly what he did, following his most outrageous stunt, ringing an LA airport and telling them he was an Interpol detective and that Jason Clark Gayford, his colleagues from The Edge, were smuggling birds' eggs up their bums.
Prank rhymes with money in the bank. This is how much ping Kyle earns, which may be why he was reinstated to radio this week.
When I'm speaking, you will shut your pie hole.
So, where is the line?
Sarah Daniel there. I'm joined by two men who've caused their fair share of controversy. Ian Stables, who featured in that clip, and Murray Ingalls, who's been making radio whoopee for decades. Well, guys, you're the light relief. Ian, do you think Kyle Sandilands was simply doing what he was paid to do there?
A complete setup. Yeah, the fallout wasn't completely what it was meant to be. He wasn't going to lose the Idol job, but the road they went down, completely planned, complete setup. Yeah. You know, the guy's on holiday in Queenstown, and all of Australia's talking about it, getting angry, the most hated man in Australia. They come back on air and rating huge, completely put together.
So has that been the case with any of your stunts?
No, usually mine haven't had that much construction behind them. They've, just come about from being bored and sitting there and just wanting to have fun and figuring why not. It's not my network and I don't care. So,
but in some sense, that's still what they're paying you for, to be there for. Because
before I got fired, yes.
Because the listeners, for whatever reason, seem to find that attractive in a host.
Well, I think today I think today too, in a really intelligent world where there's multimedia full of some very intelligent and savvy media, like we're on tonight, obviously, Media 7. Sometimes complete bollocks radio can rate really well. It can be completely thoughtless. It can have absolutely no compelling reason whatsoever, but it can rate huge because people often want relief and they want to have a laugh, they want to be offended, they want to cry, they want to hate you, they want to love you. And occasionally it works, and well, usually it works, or sometimes
When didn't it work for you?
I really can't go into that too much. Let's say that, I think we have a BSA guest here tonight, don't we, somewhere? And I paid for that soup, mate, so thanks very much for coming along. There probably comes a time when you have to, possibly look at Australia. Yeah. Does that answer your question, or did I completely...
Not really, but Murray, you've worked in Australia, didn't you? Yeah. You went to Australia because the NZBS wouldn't give you a job, didn't they?
They turned me down 26 times, mate. They said, you sound too Kiwi. So I went to Australia and really made a name there, I guess.
Was the culture different there? Was it much more rugged, even in those early days?
Yeah, it was totally different. It was there was no comparison. When I went to Australia, there was no hierarchy. Australia, suddenly I was there and there was in the midst of these amazing people like John Laws, who was turning the world upside down, a guy called Ken Sparks in Melbourne, so many of them. And I just sat there absolutely gobsmacked and think, these guys are getting away with murder. Why can't I do the same? So I got a gig. And
So had the environment changed enough that you could get work when you came back? Because I can recall being a kid in Christchurch and hearing you on the radio.
Yeah, I came back and I was lucky to score a job in Hamilton. And there was an outstanding manager there called Bren Lowe, and he would only employ people who came out of Australia. You had to work in Australia. He owned a local record shop too, so we played a lot of his music. And there were people like Keith Ashton.
Really?
And there was a wonderful disc jockey there called Keith Ashton who came out of Australia and probably was the first shock jock in this country to outrageous stuff.
So were people morally offended when that sort of thing came on the radio? Was the country ready for it?
Yeah, of course they were. People have always loved to be offended.
Yeah.
You know, there's always mother of five sitting, you know, one Pearl, one sitting there ready to write a letter to the newspaper. And so I was absolutely shocked by what I heard on the radio today. But they love being shot.
And again, that's what you're being paid for, because people want to hear that.
You become very cavalier after a while. I mean, you begin doing that. You don't set out to go, right, I'm going to be like blah, I'm going to be a shock jock. But you get on the air and you begin to have fun. And around the world, there are probably various on-air people who, I suppose, get that media name or media brand. But they just evolve into people who go, well, why not? You know, and when you're live on the air and you're doing it and you know it can go horribly wrong, you get off on it. You get adrenalised by it because you know that it's, you know, you completely can do anything you like and you become bulletproof after a while. And you start to get to a point where you know no parameters. And
which is sort of dangerous.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
but
occasionally,
I think the thing is, though, that if your listeners are enjoying it, you know, management may say, "Oh, you're going a little bit too far here," but the listeners are ringing up saying, "That was fantastic. You know, when are you going to do something more like that?" And that's the criteria, isn't it? You know,
but the regulators aren't always going to like it.
Well, look,
I mean, you look at Howard Stern. Well, you look at Howard Stern, driven off broadcast radio. By the FCC. He's now broadcasting from a satellite.
And he worked for Clear Channel America, you know, free to air FM. And but it was pretty much the company could have continued to you know, pay the fines and keep him on the air, but in the end, he went to satellite radio in New Zealand
for $500 million.
Are we going to see more of that? Because, I mean, none of the regulators can touch the internet and pretty much anything can go on there. Are we going to see a new age where there are no frontiers?
Everybody who begins in radio thinks it's the golden days of radio, you know what I mean? And no matter what period you've worked in, the old school, new school, middle school, you always think you're in the golden days of radio. It'll always regenerate and go through a cycle, you know what I mean? And I think one interesting thing, though, is radio listening in the last 3 or 4 years is actually right up. You know, we thought when YouTube came along and the likes of, you know, more audio entertainment, the radio is going to drop off. But people are attracted to things that are going on. People, you know, completely like to feel part of something. And radio being an audio entertainment source, you know, continues to strive.
I wonder whether in some of the stunts that well, certainly you've pulled, that whereas there's the element of the practical joke, and in a practical joke there's always an element of cruelty. Do you think that's an accurate statement?
Oh, it's an incredibly inaccurate statement. I don't think it's an act of any kind of act of cruelty. I think it's an act of fun mostly. I think you never ever want to go and hurt anybody. You never want to you know, cause anyone any kind of unnecessary
apart from your workmates. Because I don't think they were too happy about that call to LA Airport, were they?
No. Well, that's what I'm talking about, where you can actually begin something and you begin, you know, on a bit of a tangent. You know, we think, oh my God, I'm sitting here on a phone in New Zealand, and I can play with the LAPD and the FBI. Oh my God, this is fun. And it's like they take wildlife smuggling far more importantly than drugs, you know. Oh, you know, you got a buyer down in Mexico, you know what I mean? It's all good. And I sat there and played the whole thing. I couldn't believe that I could actually orchestrate 2 minute late shutdown, you know. I mean, it was all the passengers got off and they were lined up, all 300 of them, you know, screwed their whole day. And to be completely honest, I mean, I got a bit of a kick out of that. Yeah. So I wouldn't call that cruel.
Yeah. Murray, would you have done anything like that? You know.
Yeah. Back in the Christchurch days, lots of, I got sacked because of one.
Hey, right. There we go. All right. How many times for you?
3 times I've been sacked. But the Avon one was the worst one.
Right.
Yeah.
So is it I think what you're both saying is that it's the kick you get out of it, whatever's going to happen afterwards, is the thing more than what your boss wants you to do.
Yeah.
So you're not there because your boss wants to be crazy.
But also, you need a good boss. I had one in Christchurch, Graham Parsonage, who's still... And he was there the whole time.
I think he fired me.
He probably did. But he did it. He stood by everything you did. He stood by. The upper management were, wetting their pants, but he stood by all the time. And that's what you need.
Well, we are going to have to pause here. We're actually going to have to stop, in fact. And I'm going to have to say
started.
Well, maybe we can get you back quite soon, actually.
I want to tell you how I got fired.
Well,
same. And I could have before.
You can tell me that afterwards, actually. But I am actually going to have to declare the show finished, and that is actually our show for this week. So thank you, I think, to Ian Stables and Murray Ingalls, and to Keith Slater, Marie McNicholas, Rick Friesen and Phil
By the way,
Kitchen.
it's Muzza.
Muzza, I remember that. And thanks to you for watching. We'll be back with Media 7 at the same time next week. Until then, goodbye.